pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and thank you all for coming. It's a big evening ahead of us. It's going to be great. Roll call.
Parcel,
Here.
Battle,
Here.
Daniel,
Here.
Durbin,
Here.
Eaton, Keith, present, Ronnie.
Yes. Thank you. Minutes of June 13th, 2023. Would someone like to make a motion?
I would make a motion to approve them.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Battle,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Durbin,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
Ronnie.
Yes. Super. Next up is mayor's comments. The first thing we have that's not on the agenda, but Lisa Perry is here from Northwest Energy, and she volunteered to come and make a statement about the current status of the replacement of the light poles. We're not going to entertain any questions or discussion on this because it wasn't on the agenda, but if anybody has any comments or questions, they're more than welcome to send a letter to both myself or, Courtney or Lisa or all of us or whatever you find most appropriate. So Lisa?
Thank you. Thank you, Council, for the invitation. First off, I'd like to start by thanking the mayor and Councilman Durbin for the communication that we had during this issue. Your professionalism and candid conversation was really appreciated by me, so thank you. The transmission line rebuilding project in the Red Lodge area is one of dozens of transmission projects that we're doing across the state of Montana this year. About $80 million worth of investment, primarily to increase reliability and capacity for our customers. About 2,000 power poles are expected to be replaced this summer. Here in Red Lodge, Northwestern Energy is rebuilding about 7.5 miles of the existing 50 kV transmission line from the East Red Lodge substation to Luther. This transmission line runs along 15th Street within the city of Red Lodge, the town of Red Lodge, continuing along the south side of the city airport in Red Lodge and west to Luther. Existing wooden power poles, they're at the end of their useful life, they're approximately 50 to 60 years old, are being replaced with steel poles and new wire is being installed. The entire system is being upgraded to increase energy reliability to Red Lodge. This transmission line project has required heavy equipment and helicopters, which are being used to set poles both in remote areas as well as to keep from disturbing ground in residential neighborhoods due to the heavy rain we've had this spring. We appreciate the patience from the community we've had with this. I know the helicopters got a lot of attention. I got quite a few phone calls. So, residents in the area near the airport and others here in Red Lodge brought their concerns to me about the FAA mandated lights that we would be required to place on 11 of the replacement power poles. On this project, as on every project Northwestern Energy does, we work to address any unique concerns of the community and find solutions to those concerns. We've been able to address these concerns about the FAA required lights with a cost-effective solution that eliminates the requirement for lights, meets safety requirements, and still provides reliability for our customers. Crews continue to work on other segments of the line while we worked on the solution. Thus, the project timeline is unchanged, still anticipated to be completed in the fall of 2023. Our employees are members of the communities we serve, and finding workable solutions such as this is a great part of being a member of the community and being a good neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, if you have any comments or questions, we would love to hear them. So, all right, next up is the Sustainability Board update from Christy.
So just wanted to give everybody an update of what we've been working on the Sustainability Board. We had a broken EV charging station at the Arts Guild that was finally fixed and is now back in operation. The campaign for bringing your own bag into businesses is up and running. The Sustainability Board created some very nice posters and some actual reusable bags that 11 businesses are using. I think, Jody, you guys got some at Market 55? 55?
No, I didn't get the bags. I got the sign.
You got the posters though?
Yeah, I've got the posters, yeah.
Yeah, they did a really nice job with that. They are working on getting another EV charging station at the Civic Center and are just waiting to hear if the grant for that was awarded. And a Northwest Energy grant, thank you guys, has been written but not yet submitted to get solar panels on the Public Works building. So they've been very busy. So just wanted to give you all an update.
Thank you. Next up is appoint a city-county airport committee. So for those of you who have been paying attention to the saga of the airport, at the last airport board meeting, Commissioner Blaine proposed a committee with two of the Red Lodge appointed board members. That would be Steve Smith and Bo Ewald. And they invited the city to appoint two council people. And so I'd like to hear from council who would be willing to serve on that committee. Just let me know if you want to volunteer for that. Terry?
I'd be willing.
So that's kind of a thing that took care of itself. So if there's no objection, we will appoint them to this temporary committee and look forward to hearing back from them.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. Next up is to appoint a city airport committee. We thought it prudent to appoint a city airport committee. We were going to do that before the city county airport committee was appointed, but to represent the city's interests. The city county airport committee, the purpose was to determine what the actual boundary should be. The city airport committee should be looking at, the whole wax, what the joint agreement should be, or if a joint agreement can't be determined, then, should the city operate it themselves? What is the boundary looking like? I think there's a lot of collaborative people and a lot of willingness to work together on this project. So I'd like to appoint that committee, and that would be Brian Hanna, Jim Bushnell. Brian is the building inspector for the city. Jim Bushnell is the public works director. Steve Smith has expressed a willingness to serve on that committee. He is a pilot and is on the airport board. And then Terry and Jody, if you don't have any objections, I'd like you both to serve on that also. And then Jen Battles would be a third council person. So, we can get together and, basically that joint agreement, it's a good summary of the different issues that need to be addressed as far as like finances and assets and leadership. And so whichever way the city is going to go with that, it would be good to have all of those items taken care of and take it off of the plate of all of council until a recommendation can be made. The third thing is to appoint an airport board. And in the case that an agreement can't be reached, we do need a group to manage operations at the airport. We are collecting names of people who are interested in that. We have a few on board, and we will make that determination at a later date. And I'll keep you apprised of what's the status of that. So with that, we will have some public comments. So if you'd like to make a public comment, then please approach the podium, state your name and your address. Keep it 3 minutes. We got all the rules right up there, and we'll talk to people online when we're done with people who are present. So help yourselves. Run right up to the podium. You're up, Sandy.
I always have to start it off. Sandy Conley, 307 Hagen Avenue South. Let's see, where to start? We'll start with draft budget. I went to the budget meeting, and at the end of it, I decided that this was a wish list by department. It wasn't really a budget. So I'd like to see a real budget where your revenues and your expenditures are somewhere in the neighborhood as opposed to just a wish list by department. The other thing that we didn't discuss, that there may be a meeting in the future, which is this year's audit. apparently there's been an overcalculation of the mill levy for the year before last as well as this year. It hasn't been remedied. And I'm just wondering if we're going to get a break on our tax bill or a check like the state sent us, which we really did appreciate. Oh, airport. This is my opinion. I think this is ridiculous. It's time for the city council to take control of the situation, reverse the mayor's termination of the interlocal agreement from 2018, and mediate the areas of concern to the city. Appointing board after board is just a waste of everybody's time. Those that are most qualified to serve on the airport board are currently doing so. It's time to regroup. Unless the city has the $1,331,535 paid for the county assets. I didn't see that reflected in the budget, or actually $1 for operating an airport. If the city has that kind of money, then we should be reimbursed for our mills. And another thing that I ran across is that the city received a one-time federal grant of $400,000 to be used for infrastructure. And I didn't see that in the budget. And I know that the damage from on the streets from the flood, we can't fix because FEMA doesn't reimburse us. So they have to stay that way until FEMA comes around to it. But I think all of us has hit the hole in front of Ace Hardware and the county building. And if we have $400,000, perhaps we could repave that block of houses. That would be really nice.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment?
My name is Doug Miller, 814 Cooper Avenue North. And I just wanted to touch base about the budgeting process. I realize it was a preliminary process that we went through last week, but I think I agree with Sandy that it wasn't the best shot at a budget. A budget is supposed to be a tool that you help use to run a company or a city government. And it protects the city government's financial health, and you can make plans for the future. The budget seemed to have been just kind of thrown together, like she said. I did a rough down and dirty based on what was presented last week, and it shows $1.7 million deficit. And I realized the property tax wasn't in there, but the point is, how do you expect a department head to run a department and be responsible and accountable if you have numbers that you can't live by? So I was just disappointed in that. Also, I don't know if there's a actual versus budget report going on. If there is, I'd like to know where it's at. Do we compare? Since we go to the trouble of putting a budget together, do we compare and see how we do against that budget? I don't know. And I will say I'm new to I'm new to city government and the structure, but I'm not new to finance. I've got 30 plus years as a financial controller, and I've put together dozens of budgets, some smaller, most larger than this one. But I was just astounded. Did not appear to be any accountability. So I just would like to know if there's something I'm missing. Is there a actual versus budget out there? Along the same lines, it sure seems like we should have a capital expenditure budget. I know looking through all the handouts last week, I know there were capital expenditures, but there were expenses, not capital assets. So again, how do you manage the city? Who decides on what's going to be spent and when it's going to be spent? And if you do you notify the citizens of the Red Lodge? So that was just the other point. And then I'm just going to touch on the last subject, the audit. There's so many questions to be asked about that. The June 22nd audit, which is 9 months after the fact, we had, from what I read in the report, serious material weaknesses. And I'd like to know if those have been addressed, because that's dangerous. That's financially dangerous to have those type of material weaknesses and not address them. And I think last week, Jan, you mentioned somebody raised an issue about the 7th material point that the auditors brought up, and you mentioned that it resolved and mentioned, or sent to Montana, the state of Montana. Well, what about to the citizens of Red Lodge? We'd like to know what the results are. And maybe they're out there, I don't know, but I'd sure like to know what happened, because as a financial controller, those weaknesses would have got me fired. Those are not insignificant. Those need to be addressed.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else have a comment? No?
Thank you, Mayor. Bo Ewaldy, Franklin Lane, Red Lodge. And my comments really sort of fall into three categories. As we move forward on this, I think it would be best from, I don't think work at the airport, but spend a lot of time there trying to help improve it. So what would help most going forward is to kind of know what the city's objectives are around, whether it be the boundary around the airport or whatever the city really is aimed at. The way it feels is that there's a long-term objective to try to subdivide the airport and turn it into something else. That's what it feels like from this side of the fence. So we look forward to hearing about that. Secondly, I would say that, our little city here has been substantially upgraded over the last 20 to 25 years with a public-private partnership. And in my time here, that started with the new hospital that we built that I think has approaching $4 million of private money contributed to build it. The fun run, which has raised lots and lots of money. The new high school had private money going into it, and then more private money going into it for upgrades to the athletic fields and the athletic facilities, as well as the new tech center. The new fire training center that's out in the county was over $1 million of private money went to build that. And the most recent of the big projects, in fact, is the emergency air operations part of the airport, where we've been building that with private money to make it so that we can better fight forest fires here. It was fortuitous that we had it ready for the flood disaster last year. And you've seen many training helicopters and other things. That in addition to the swimming pool and a whole host of other skate facilities, both skateboards as well as skating in the winter. Those are all public-private partnerships that have allowed our little city to grow and be a huge part of what it is today, modernized as it is today. So I'm continue to look forward to working with reasonable people. I think there is a reasonable solution to the airport. I think both sides need to know what the objectives are. Let's get the ideas out on the table and work together to solve those. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Okay, is there anyone online who'd like to make a comment? Anyone online? Who's color two? Oh, all right, last call for comment. All right, moving on to standing committees. First one is and thank you all. Your comments, we appreciate them all. If you want specific answers, please don't hesitate to call City Hall. We can't answer them in this forum, but we can during the day. You're welcome to call. Standing committee, the first thing up is Jen is going to make a presentation about the fiscal year 2023-24 draft budget. Jen?
So this is a discussion item for tonight, and actually all council members were present at the July 20th meeting. So I'll say a couple comments, but then I just want to ask the group, I just want to ask all of us, are there specific things that you want to go over? I don't think we want to do a repeat of line item by line item like we did on the 20th. So I'll go where you want me to go, basically. But I will say we did have I thought, a pretty productive hour and a half on Thursday. I'll acknowledge that there was a Zoom link that was out there that was broken. The agenda was correct, but there was a Zoom link out there that was broken, and we are working to make sure that the recording gets out for everybody. I did also, excuse me, keep track of all of the questions. I have gotten a couple questions today that haven't been updated, but basically the presentation that I put together and that we talked about on Thursday is available. I made some updates to it today and I sent it to Danae at like 4 o'clock. So I imagine she'll put that up tomorrow. So just based on answers we've been getting, more questions we've been getting, I just keep updating this document. So folks can go there and we can go there too to kind of reference what we've already talked about or what's been covered. I guess I will say, just because there was some public comment and I want to, you know, I don't want, again, I want this conversation to be where we need it to go, but the draft budget does have a column of what the 2022-2023 budget was and a middle column that was spent through June 2023, so that's actual. So that's how you read that, is there's, you know, the blue column is the budget from last year, the middle column is what we have spent to date for the, or through June, and then the request for next year is in red. So just wanted to kind of guide everybody through that. I do know there was some great suggestions on Thursday about kind of using that note column to help people understand what they're looking at, and so those changes have started to come in. Let's see, and I guess I just want to mention that there is a line item in this budget for operating the airport, but it's based off of last year's expenditures. So it's $1 million is allocated in there for the airport. And so if, again, we need to send something to the state as a draft so that they can come back and give us our certified taxable value, sorry. And then we'll have this again in August to move to approve. And if it turns out that things go sideways and we have unexpected expenses that weren't budgeted for, then that's why budget amendment. That's why we have budget amendment as an option. So, do you want me to go over the questions? Do you want me, you know, in terms of the 5 of us, you know, who are here tonight to discuss? Are there particular things that you want me to go over that?
I have a couple
Just as a review. Yes, please.
I really appreciate all the time that you spent putting that together, Jen. That was a huge thing, and I wish I had been able to see that as a new council person in January. I think that would have been really helpful. So maybe that's something that we can do in the future for orientation. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you did a really great job. So thank you for all the time you put into that and the effort. And I think that there's some education to be done with the public, because a lot of the things that people bring up, like actual versus budget, is right on the budget. So, and then it's all posted on the city website too. So we need to do a better job of letting people know how to find that, maybe. And I don't know whose job that would be, but I'm happy to help with that. And
Like admin committee.
yeah, just let people know where it is and help interpret some of the things. Because it is not an easy, it's a very complicated budget. And it's not in a format that most of us who have financial backgrounds are accustomed to.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a balance sheet, it's not an income statement, it's Black Mountain software for municipalities. And so, anyway, those are my comments.
Any more comments or discussion, Terry?
Yeah, so I would say that I think the comments that came from the public were valid. One of the things that I've brought up to most city council members that are in the finance committee is, I brought up, I think last time, was the availability of this audit report. And I do share the concerns that some of these findings and have been carried over that are fairly serious from the previous year. And I think that part of our due diligence, we should have answers for the public before we go forward and vote on this as to what the resolution is and the steps forward. So I'd say that's really important. The other thing I was, again, not to be histrionic, but looking forward, I was glad to see that Jen pulled out. I was glad to see that Jen pulled out some of the slides from the 2018 template for budget presentation and filled some of those in. But I think to do a service to the public that we should start in January and have the admin and finance committee, probably it's bigger than one person can do, but actually update that template annually, because I think that's a very visual way for people to see where the money's going. And I think that will help point out to the city council where the holes are. And along that line, I also wanted to say that I was disappointed, that I'm hoping we can do better next year. This budget process flow chart was brought up during the work session. And of this, I think there were like 5 squares that involved city council that I think this is a very valid flow chart, but none of those steps happened. And so people that are in, and I'll just say from my standpoint, being in the Public Works Committee and Public Safety, we've had no visibility into the budget before this was released to the public, although we asked about it and we had it on the agenda for every meeting. So that was a choice, whatever, not to have us involved. But I think that the validity in this budget process flow chart is that we have more people looking at the budget to ask questions real time, as opposed to waiting until we introduce this to the public. So I think that was, to me, a huge disappointment and a miss this year. And I'm hoping that we can, when we talk a little later about things for website updates, that we can maybe incorporate that in there as a standard practice, because I do agree with Chris, this kind of information would be really helpful to all city council members. So,
Any more comments or discussion?
There are a couple of answers in here that are related to questions that came, or comments that came forward tonight, if you want me to go over those. Okay. Why does the audit take 9 months to complete? So completing the actual audit only takes a couple of days, but the auditors put us on the calendar when they can get to us, and they have a lot of cities to do. If you want, so there are live links on this presentation, and also it'll be in the minutes, that you can access all audits for our community via the city's website. You can go to the city's website, click on a link, and it will take you to the state website where they all are for the whole state. So it is pretty easy to find. We also submit a report to the state of annual financial report December 31st of every year. And that report is approved by the state, and that is also available via link on the website and through this report. There is a month-to-month expenditure and revenue report on the city's website, also easily accessible. And you know, I guess I just reiterate what Chris said, that just because they're there doesn't mean they're necessarily easy to understand. And so we're hearing folks say, we want somebody to help us walk through these numbers more. And so this presentation on the 20th was a voluntary thing in a way to try to start doing that. And let's see here. There were some questions about actual line items on here that came in. I want to get to those. I made some changes. So there were a couple of things about the presentation that needed some commentary. So for example, the general fund revenue pie chart is non-tax revenues only. And so I did update. So those kinds of things that we talked about on Thursday have been updated so that it's a little easier to understand. I do think it's important to reiterate, you know, Tom Kunz's point from Thursday, which is the general fund budget for 2023-2024. The allocated funds for capital projects, which are typically denoted in our capital improvement project plan. Like we have a CIP, it's not like it's willy-nilly, but those expenditures are captured from resort tax budget and enterprise funds primarily. there's not general fund money that's being allocated for those projects. One thing that I think we should talk about as a council, is there was a suggestion that city building, like the city building budget, or is that an enterprise fund? Yeah, that the city building enterprise fund, that perhaps we could allocate some of the electricity costs for this building in particular, that we could have enterprise funds pay for that, because the building department runs out of here. And I think that might be a good idea to relieve a little bit of the general fund. That is the thing that we haven't. It'd be like $50. It wouldn't.
He has like 2 licenses on it.
Okay. Well, if it's not gonna be substantial, then never mind. Let's see. What about cash reserves? So that was another question. So we'll know our cash reserves for each fund once the state provides us with our certified taxable value in August, and then before the budget that we will approve in August comes before us, it will have all that data in it, and I can add that to this slideshow. The last thing I want to mention is that there was a question about that final budget approval process being submitted, and that is in the slideshow. It's reference slide 2, and it's stated in here, so it's been here for you to look at. And I guess I would say the biggest increases in revenue for us have been business license fees for this anticipated budget. And I think everything else we really covered on Thursday. So I have one more question.
Yep, just as a follow-up to what you're saying, so, because I didn't see the presentation you did on the 20th, I haven't seen that on the website. Has it?
I just did updates to it based on the feedback we got. So
Okay.
So Danae
Hasn't
got
been
it.
posted yet.
Danae
Okay.
got it at 4 o'clock.
Okay, so you're gonna, just so that it's clear for the public and for city council, you're gonna have that presentation updated with your changes.
Right.
You're gonna have that up on the website this week.
Tomorrow.
Okay,
probably.
tomorrow.
As long as Danae's not sick.
as well as all of the questions that were generated, and then the answers you have, and then the ones that you're not going to have answers to, when those will be answered.
I don't have a timeline for when they will be answered, but they are all on the presentation. All of the questions I've collected to date, every
Okay.
single one are on here.
Okay.
And I can keep adding to them
And then
between
do we-
now and.
And
if I
then do
get
we
more.
know when the recorded version of that is going to be posted?
Depending on staffing and.
Well, the only reason why I asked is because I thought when we talked about recording it, that the reason it was going to be recorded was so that people, for example, there were people that contacted me, I'm sure other city council people, that weren't able to call in because of the confusion,
Yeah.
but were very interested in hearing what went on, which may spur questions by them of what they want to provide to Jen. So I think that's an important step, and then maybe even have another workshop for the public to address some of the concerns. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions or discussion? Okay.
Okay.
Yep, thank you very much. You did a lot of work at this moment. Thank you. Next up is ordinance number 964 to amend the city charter form of government. This is the first public hearing. We'll open the public hearing after Chris Keys provides us with a little introduction for it.
That was my introduction. So we are required by law to place on the ballot an updated charter, city charter, and that's, the charter is the closest thing that we have to a city constitution, I guess. And so next year, we start the process for that city charter update. But we have, actually the next 2 ordinances, we are looking to do a couple of changes prior to that. And so this first one, ordinance 964. This asks electors if they want to amend the city charter and adopt the city manager form of government, which is passed, would take effect July 1st, 2024. So that is it in a nutshell. To get the conversation started, would anybody like to make a motion to approve?
We'll have some public hearing first.
Oh, pardon me.
So with that, we'll start the public hearing. If anybody has a comment, please approach the podium, follow the rules like we did last time, limit it to 3 minutes, state your name and address, on this particular topic. If anybody has a comment? Anybody online have a comment about, ordinance 964 to amend the city charter form of government? All right, anyone present? I'm gonna be calling last call here. Last call for public comment. Public hearing is now closed. Thank you. So now,
Can I go say that again? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve ordinance 964 so we can discuss?
I'll move to approve so we can have a discussion.
I'll second, we can discuss.
so council's been, talking, and, you know, a lot of people in the community have, voiced their, preference to change the government. Currently, we have a mayor commission form of government. There's the overall, sense of that is that if we had a city manager, then that would give us more expertise to, you know, as the community continues to grow. And a person who's a manager would have a lot more training than me, or, you know, your standard mayor. They get training to, you know, create budgets, to find personnel, to manage departments, to, you know, do all sorts of things. And so, so this was drafted with that in mind, and, you know, it can come up again in a couple of years. There's pros and cons to passing it now. So if anybody has any questions or comments about that, then we can discuss it. Sarah?
You guys can go first. Do you have a question?
Well, we talked about this in admin and finance, and part of the thing is that it's going to be it has to be voted on next year regardless. Our whole charter our charter is up for vote every 10 years. And it will be before the voters, next year regardless. So, my main concern, and I feel that I think other people on admin and finance also share this concern, is that it's very rushed right now. And we don't necessarily feel that the public will be educated enough to make an informed decision on voting on this whole change. I agree with the mayor 100% that I think that the city of Red Lodge is definitely grown to the point where having a manager will help, even especially in the budget process, and just overall management of the city. Having a trained professional in that role will definitely help. I think that there's a lot of our employees that feel the same. It can't be fun to have a new boss every 2 years, so I wouldn't want that. So my only concern, I mean, I am absolutely for putting something before the voters. I just don't want to rush it because I don't want it to fail because they're not educated in what we're asking.
Yeah, if I can step in here, I agree with everything that you said, Jody, and we have to have the language done by 3 weeks from now, and to get on the ballot in November. And I don't foresee that we have enough time to talk through this with everybody and answer the question of where the money's gonna come from. I know that'll be a big question. I just feel like we need more time to not only educate the public, but educate ourselves on what that means.
Yeah, I agree. Especially since it is something that's going to be on the ballot, you know, coming up, and it's something that's the public is definitely gonna have to vote on. I think time is of the essence, and we don't really have that. And especially, yeah, to have everybody informed and being able to weigh out the pros and cons. It just seems very rushed.
I'll chime in and say, I would very much like to see our community, eagerly embrace the city manager form of government. I want to clarify that what is mandatorily on the ballot next year is not the question, do you want to change your form of government? It is a question that says, do you want to elect a commission to research the question about whether or not you want to change your city form of government? And so here again, I think education is really key. And I also think that mandatory process every 2 years involves a commission that meets, that basically has a year of doing education and doing research and figuring out where's the money going to come from and figuring out how to do a successful search should we make the decision to move. And so, again, I'd like to see this succeed. I'd like to see this idea succeed because I think Red Lodge is ready for it, and I think we're being hampered. We're being hampered from getting where we need to be. And also, I think that process of having extensive conversation with the community and research and preparing our budget, preparing our council, preparing our staff for a shift should the community decide to do that is a necessary part of the process if it's going to be successful. And I would like to see it be successful, not just that the voters voted for it, but that we are ready to implement those changes once that vote happens. And so while the ideal of 964 is something I am totally behind, I'm not ready to pass this tonight.
All right, any other comments? Terry?
I have a short comment, actually. I agree with everything everybody said up here. The one thing that I noticed when I went over this, I don't know what was used as a model, but one of the things I found on other ordinances of this type that's important is it will sort of change the responsibility of the city council members, because just hiring a city manager is not going to fix all of the problems of Red Lodge. With that, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us also to have accountability and ensure transparency. But the people that are going to have to hold the city manager accountable and the rest of the city is going to be the city council. So I think with elections and things like that coming up, I hope everybody keeps that in the back of their mind, that people are going to have, that's going to be part of their job if this gets passed. So that's
In
it.
addition to a new mayor.
Correct. With a new mayor too.
All right then, any more discussion? Roll call.
Huddle,
No.
Daniel,
No.
Durbin,
No.
Keith. No. Ronnie.
No.
Thank you. Next up is ordinance 965 to amend the city charter to allow electronic attendance. And Chris is going to introduce that.
Oh, again, you just did that, so that's what I was gonna say. Yes, this is a short ordinance to amend the charter to allow city council members to attend meetings and vote either in person or online. Currently, we cannot vote. We can attend, but we cannot vote when we are in an online meeting. So this would be also a change for the charter that would come on a ballot in November. And it's fairly simple.
So with that, we'll open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. Would anybody like to make a comment? Please approach the podium and speak. Jen.
Jen, yeah, North Platte, and I like the idea of voting being allowed electronically in an extenuating circumstance or an absence that's, I know we all have lives and we have vacations. And if I am a part of the process and I've been active and I elect my council representative, then in theory, I want them to have a voice at every meeting. My concern is that would we have a meeting like this with 5 council people absent, live audience, and then trying to capture, opinions and the energy around certain ordinances and changes and things that are facing the city. My concern is a council missing and saying my piece, you know, to the Zoom screen. So I mean, I think I'm in favor of allowing the vote. Is there language that can be introduced that would allow it to be 1 or 2 members at a maximum? Or, you know, so it's not an absent council making a vote electronically.
Thank you, Jen.
Anyone else? Approach the podium.
Sandy Conley, 7 Hagen Avenue South. While I was on the planning board during COVID, we had quite a few of us that were on the screen and we allowed voting at that time. I'm more concerned about the unintended consequences, having all those chairs empty except for the mayor, where I think that the city council should be face-to-face with the constituents. I know when I've been online trying to attend a meeting, the reception would go in and out and I would miss words. I couldn't always see because the camera's up there. So it's not as ideal as we would like it to be. And I think that there needs to be a limit on how many city council members are online versus how many are here. I'm kind of against it, even though I was part of that. Because that's why. Because that's why. I mean, you know, I'm in Vegas and, you know, the doors, you know, people are at the door and you're distracted. We've seen it before where the kid walks in or the dog is barking and all of those types of things. It's very distracting to have somebody online when you're trying to run a serious meeting. And then asking them to vote, even though the planning board does vote, I don't think the city council should. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Sandy. Anybody else want to make a comment on this ordinance? Anyone online want to make a comment on this ordinance to allow electronic participation? Last call. Comments on this ordinance? All right. Public hearing is now closed. Discussion. Oh, motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 965.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
I would like to echo what both Jen and Sandy said. In the terms of having that be an ideal meeting, it is not. And I can tell you last week, I did just that. I was on vacation and I called in and it's definitely not ideal, but those of us who have jobs and take vacations and have to travel, you know, maybe we can limit the number of times you do that per year. But right now we're in a situation where, you know, Kelly and I are missing meetings like 2 months in a row. And, you know, to not be able to have to hold up votes is not ideal either. So I think in this day and age that we should allow for some of that to be able to happen. And I'm not sure how we do limit that.
With our council rules and procedures.
No.
Yeah. We can fine tune, this would just allow it in our city charter, which absolutely says that you have to be present. And we have to have 4 people present to have a quorum. So if by chance 3 of us are missing, there is no city council meeting unless we're physically present in the room, unless we have 4 people.
So we could put
So, yeah, so in our council rules and procedures is where we could limit the number of people or the number of times you can be absent or why you can be absent.
Or
you know.
only X number of council members per meeting can be absent.
Yeah, so
And still participate.
that absolutely, if this passes, council could then go in and would work up those rules, change to the rules and procedure, would then
And I think I would
fine
just
tune that.
echo, like, when we think about the charter in general, for folks that are used to bylaws, for example, for an organization, you want it to be broad in the charter and specific in your rules and procedures, so that, because it takes a ballot measure to change the charter. It's a lot. It goes to the voters. And so to be able to amend the rules and procedures as things change so that we're not having to put it, you know, be egregious in putting things in front of the voters every single year just because we want to make a change. And for the language of this one, it basically just, it's a deletion. There's no addition, basically. It's going to look like, right now it just says 4 council members be physically present. And really it would just say requirement that a quorum of city council consists of 4 members. And then in our council rules and procedures, we can address the specifics of electronic voting. I do have one amendment I would like to suggest, just based on the title. So the title says an ordinance of the city of Red Lodge to amend the charter of the city of Red Lodge. And that's not what this is. This is an ordinance of the city of Red Lodge to propose to the voters an amendment of the charter of the city of Red Lodge. So I would just like for that title to be changed. To propose to the voters an amendment to the charter of the city of Red Lodge.
Would someone like to make a motion to amend the title of the charter of the ordinance? Okay.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? Terry?
Cynthia, do you have anything to say first?
Yeah. No, I'm worried about, yes, in theory, this sounds great. I mean, I have kids, things happen, sporting events, whatnot, but I'm also worried about the abuse of this ordinance, using it as an excuse, or I don't want to say using it as an excuse, but basically abusing it more times than once. So if we could put in like limit to so many times, like, you know, yes, it's like a kind of like a emergent use only. I feel like that would make sense to me, but just saying, oh, I'm out. I mean, we all have jobs. We all have other arrangements, and life is in a way. But I feel like we've been elected to be here, to sit here. Yeah, I mean, ideally, it'd be great to vacation on a beach somewhere and just chime in. But
Are you comfortable addressing that with rules and procedures instead of in the charter?
with the rules of it, like keeping this ordinance, but then making a few of the requirements, like limiting it, is where I'm at.
Can we put something like that in the ordinance to make it clear to the voters that it's not a free-for-all?
Yeah.
That, you know,
We're all on vacation.
there are some sidebars to this, and,
Or there will be.
If you want to draft it again, then we would need to schedule another hearing, and that would miss the deadline for the ballot. But, I mean, I would propose that you can draft any sort of policy and procedures that you like to address those concerns, but that's up to council. Terry?
So I have a comment around that. So to me, the problem I have with this is it's kind of going on with Cynthia was saying. It's a little too black and white, and I think there's no allowance for gray area. So, and I think, be honest with you, if it's a resolution, it can be passed by council, it can be changed by council at any time. So this could be very self-serving based on who's on council, right? And I don't think that's being fair to the public. I think that there should be some guidelines so that it isn't abused. And then I think maybe tweaks, but I do think that this is way too broad right now for the public to, you know, it's either you're for it or against it. And I know myself, if I was sitting out there, I'd say, well, I'm for it, but in limited circumstances. So I do think that whole thing of being abused, it could happen with resolutions. So I think this needs more work for me.
It's been proposed that our charter is overbroad in this specific item because that, and like Jen was mentioning, that it's not really charter material to determine how people can attend. And so it's, you know, when it's overbroad like that, it makes it very, very difficult to make changes like we do with ordinances or our rules and procedures. So whether or not you'd like to change it, I think it has created, it's very difficult when people are gone and they'd like to vote. And it doesn't really change our form of government or, any of the big things. But it's totally up to council, so. Any further discussion or comments? We need to vote on the amendment, don't we?
Right, oh, I don't know if there's discussion on the
So we can-
amendment.
So we can make that amendment, but we can't amend anything in the actual.
You can amend.
We can
anything you
amend whatever we want tonight, we just can't amend anything after the meeting, or it'll go back to first reading, which means it won't go on the November ballot.
So yes, you can amend this ordinance tonight. We can vote on it and it's okay.
Okay. Well, I would like to put some kind of language in there that makes it clear
Mhm.
to people voting on it that it's not a free-for-all, and I don't know how to word that.
Can we first vote on
Free for
the
all.
first
Okay.
motion to amend? So is there any more discussion on the amendment of the title?
On the title.
And Jen, do you want to repeat that?
Sure, it would say an ordinance of the city of Red Lodge, Montana to propose to the voters an amendment to the charter of the city of Red Lodge.
Any further discussion on that? All right, roll call.
Battles?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Durbin?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes.
All right, and then, Chris, would you like to make a motion on, your proposed amendment?
Yes, I would make a motion to, and I don't have the wording, so we need to work on that, but we're putting something in the for amending the charter language, that section, that makes it clear that it's a limited number of times, or that there will be.
Or you could just say, for amending the charter for the city of Red Lodge to allow members of city council to attend meetings and vote in person or electronically online as determined by the council rules and procedures, or something like that.
That doesn't
If
address,
that
that doesn't address Carrie's concern that then it'll just get abused because we'll have a council that's like, it's fine, and they won't listen to
Depending on
this.
who the council is, if it
Do you
could
have any
potentially be that way.
suggestions?
I'll just tell you, again, I'll go back to the last time when we had to go to the airport where we got bit by one line, which was a whereas, and rushed something through. I feel like if this has to be done tonight in order to be on the ballot, then I'd say we missed our opportunity because we don't exactly know what we wanted to say. I don't think we're going to be able to wordsmith it and finalize it tonight. So I'd say we just wait and then, bring it up at a later time when we have more time to discuss it and figure out what the right thing to do is. I don't see what the hurry is, I guess.
I just want to remind you that, I did talk to Dan Clark, who at MSU, and he's the one that said that he thought that it was overbroad. So if you want to, it's somewhat improper to put limitations on that sort of thing in the charter. It is more proper to put those limitations in the actual rules that we deal with. Because as times change, that's part of this issue. During COVID, we could attend electronically, and that wasn't a thing before then. But it's very common now. I think we've all attended meetings electronically, and it just makes it a lot more functional as far as unexpected absences and things like that.
Well, and that's how, my recollection is that's how planning board does it. It's not it's the language is sparse in the bylaws with specific and procedure. And really, like, I get what you're getting at, Terry, but I also like the idea of, trusting our successors to represent the public the way we do. And so, and not putting, and not allowing it to, not changing council rules and procedures on a whim, I guess is what I'm getting at. We haven't done that. And I wouldn't expect that future council members would do that. And I would, it's a pretty straightforward change. And I feel like, again, it's one of those cases where we're being left behind because our charter language is old. So I'd at least like to vote on it tonight. And and I'd like to trust that our successors aren't going to change the rules and procedures in the same way that folks have trusted us to do our job with integrity.
And Dan Clark has looked this over and approved it, and as has Dennison.
Dan Clark has not reviewed the specific language, but this is something that many people have talked about, both this and, you know, the charter, which is, you know, I mean, our own council has talked about this. Everybody seemed to be in favor of being able to attend electronically. I mean, one of our people isn't here tonight because she can't attend electronically. It's like, not,
And let's just remember too, we're not deciding to do this. We're deciding to let the voters decide to do this. And in my mind, let them decide. I don't see a reason why we shouldn't do that. I
just caught, sorry, the language was a little off, but then when you add it to propose to the vote, I was
Right.
like, oh, wait a minute.
Let them decide.
So they're making the decision.
Yeah.
Well, and frankly, any of us could decide just not to show up every night.
Yep.
And, you know, I think we all take our roles seriously.
Exactly. Again, like I said, I don't want it to be something that is used as a tool, so to speak, whether, you know, I don't know, I just don't want it to be abused. I feel like you said, if we can put guidelines in there and requirements in procedures, I think I'd be okay with that.
Okay.
But then again, I'm okay with reading this and allowing the voters to decide if it's, you know, something they want.
any other comments? Any more discussion?
Do you want to just leave it as this?
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Okay.
Keep it broad.
So is there a live motion? I don't think you ever finished a
She
motion.
never finished her motion or
If there's
anything.
no other,
It goes back to the main
discussion.
motion.
Go back to the main motion.
Yeah, you guys voted on me right now.
So you need a motion to approve.
No,
No,
we
we
already
already
have
have that.
No, you guys already have that main motion. And you didn't do a motion to change the wording. You guys discussed it.
so the next thing we do roll call vote if, there's no further discussion or comments. My hope is that it would also encourage more people to run for offices. I think 3 of you ran unopposed. It's very difficult to get people to run for office because of the terror of not being able to make it to the council meetings. And again, those things should be, you know, defined so that your concerns are addressed, so that people don't take advantage of it. There's maybe a limit or, you know, a percentage that needs to be here in person, but all those things could be worked out and the voters could ultimately decide. So if you don't have any more comments or discussion, then we'll do roll call vote. Is there any more comments or discussion? All right, roll call.
Battles? Yes. Daniel?
Yeah.
Durbin?
No.
Keys?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes.
All right, thank you. Next up is item number 4, timeline and process for website updates. It's up for discussion, and so who would like to introduce this topic?
I will, I guess, since I was the one that brought it up.
Okay.
So a couple of things that I think I mentioned last time. I would like to see, and I'm perfectly willing to draft a resolution or whatever ordinance, or whatever it needs to be to get this going. But I do believe that any presentations that are done during city council should be posted on our website so that people have the most current information. And I know that we do have an agenda package that comes out ahead of time, but many times those agenda packages do not have the most current version of the presentations or all of the information that is shared with the public. So I'd like to see that, and I can think of a couple different instances where this happened, where really valuable information came up during the council meeting, but yet it wasn't available to people to go back and look at when they saw something that was contrary on public media. So I think that would be, I think that would really help to serve the public and to serve the council. So that's, and then the other thing along the lines with that would be, again, the timeliness of how we put information like this up on the web. So for example, let's go back to what we were talking about with the budget meeting. You know, there's been a delay there and we keep moving on and we're going to be pressured to pass a budget and we may not have an opportunity for everybody to look at the materials. So I'm hoping we can do something to address that and at least make that a little bit better for the public.
Any discussion?
I guess I just have a question. Have we been having issues with being able to upload our live meetings?
And like I brought up in admin, I don't know if we need to switch from GoToMeeting or have IT look at it. To see what the difference is. But
Can
we
you talk a
tried.
little louder, Lonnie, please? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I just said that we have been trying to get the recordings online. There's a glitch with GoToMeeting and our website. So we have been trying, we've tried to get them on as quickly as we can. The budget presentation, Jen had to make her changes to it, like she had said, and those will be up probably by tomorrow. People take vacations. Not everybody is trained into getting the stuff up on the website.
And you're on vacation today. Thank you for coming in, by the way.
Yeah.
We try. We do try very hard to get everything on there. So
Yeah, I think it's, the main complaint I've heard from people is the live meetings, the recording of, like, especially our city council meetings not being updated on the site. So if there is an IT type issue, I think we do need to try and address that as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and internally, you know, I mean, council doesn't tell staff.
Right,
That's the
exactly.
difference between
Yeah.
mayor and council,
Yeah.
one of them. And, you know, internally, we do work very hard to make sure, but, I mean, we have a limited staff and limited technology and everything costs
And I
money.
understand.
We're trying to keep everything under the budget. And so, you know, I don't know if you're thinking of making a rule or, what you have in mind, but, you know, there's only so much you can do with X, Y, and Z, and, you know, so if you want to keep discussing it, but just make sure that you stay within the parameters of what
And
council
I
can
know,
do
and I
what.
absolutely
Yeah, and we
was
can,
not trying to tell
Yeah,
Lonnie
and-
what to do. I'm just saying, this is the feedback that I've had, and that, you know, as a council person representing those people, if we are having issues, I would like to, yeah, to have them.
we would too, and we
Yeah.
do everything in our power to make sure that that happens. And if there's any other questions about things, you're welcome to ask Jen.
So I have just one more follow-on to that. So she's talking about the recorded sessions, which I agree with you 100%. I'm talking about the actual presentation materials. And there's been pushback. It's at the mayor's discretion and the staff's time. I understand that, for what can be posted. So one thing I would like to say is maybe we could throw it to admin and finance to make some sort of a guesstimate as to, would it be an extra hour a week or whatever that the council could have as, to take certain admin time and budget it in so that we can get our materials put up on the website for our constituents. I think that would be reasonable.
Terry, I have a question for you. So,
Yeah.
So if we have, I get your point that, like, presentation materials, they're static when they're in the packet, and then our discussion kind of gives them color and changes them and nuance and all those things. And from my point of view, that is captured in the minutes. And so is it a solution, like, are you suggesting a solution where those materials are edited and then provided as part of the minutes from that meeting?
I'm open to whatever the council thinks would be the best method of doing that, but what I'm saying is, I'll just give myself as an example. The stuff I did on events, all of the stuff I did on recycling, you know, I had a packet of the speaker, I had a packet that I provided the Friday before, but I was making tweaks to that and making improvements up to the last minute. So I had that finished presentation that was ready to go. I would have liked that version kept.
Okay.
And so I think, you know, maybe getting them in the, I don't know, but it needs to be searchable for people. So if they want to go back and say, what is the most current, I mean, we've got a database up there. What's the most current presentation that was on recycling? They could go up there and pull it up, you know, and I would be glad to put not only the presentation, but the speaker notes attached. And I'm just saying, I think that those are the kind of things for people that can attend the meeting or that haven't written down notes and written down all the little details of data that we've taken. It'd be a good way for them to go up there at a later date and get the true information from the city.
It is
Thank
searchable. You can
Right.
search
Okay,
to find whatever you want in the
right.
That was
agendas
good
and
for
notes.
an explanation.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any more discussion?
Well, I have a question. What would you ultimately like to see then? Like a resolution or ordinance?
Yeah, I would
or
say
just-
I'm glad to draft one, but I don't want to draft one if I don't, I want to get input from you guys either tonight or offline. But I'd like to know what you think about that and what you would like to see in a resolution. I mean, I have my own ideas, I've just expressed to you, but I'd like to, get your input too, because I'd like to introduce a resolution that gets passed by all of the city council members, and they all think that it's something that's worthwhile, so. So are you guys in favor of it, looking at a draft or providing information or not, or what do you think?
I look at a draft.
I was gonna say, I think it's something admin and finance could look
Yeah.
at, and
I'm just thinking of the complexity of having you at the meeting, but maybe next week would be, or next session would be good because I'll be gone.
I'll be gone too.
Okay. That won't work. I mean, we could do a special.
one question I have for you is,
Yeah.
is it okay? So the admin and finance committee agenda is ridiculous. Is it okay if this gets pushed till the fall? Or like,
I mean, I
like,
think,
is it, in your mind, is it urgent, or as long as someone is looking at it and gonna come to the table with something in a reasonable?
yeah, I mean, I'm glad to draft a resolution. I could get it done this week. I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's just, and I don't think it needs to go, to be honest with you, before the admin and finance committee.
Oh, okay.
I can draft it, I can send it around to you guys if you're okay with that. You can give me any additions, and then I won't be here next time to introduce it, but maybe the following, get it on the agenda, and then we can vote on it. I think it's fairly straightforward.
I'd like to see a draft.
Okay? Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, are we done with that? Next up is, nothing for public health and safety on the land use and planning board resolution 2303, request council to update city charter. I think that probably took care of itself because council did not.
No, I still want to talk about it.
Okay.
We didn't talk about it explicitly. So
Okay.
it is just information.
All right.
Also, Cody Markser is online, and she has offered to step up to represent city planner because Courtney is not here today. I just want to let her chime in whenever she wants to, but there's the packet's a little confusing, but essentially there is a resolution that goes with the 2017 Planning Board and Zoning Commission bylaws. So that's what we're looking at right now. The resolution is a recommendation by the planning board to pursue city charter amendments pertaining to Planning Board and Zoning Commission member appointments. So we looked at two ordinances today about proposing to the voters amending the city charter. One was electronic voting and the other was city manager form of government. There is discussion that there is a line item also in the charter that is problematic and is in conflict with a number of planning or a number of board bylaws. So it applies to the planning board right now. It applies to urban renewal district. It applies to resort tax committee. Might apply to some others. But essentially, there is so I'm just gonna summarize this resolution. So this resolution came from the planning board. It is a recommendation that city council pursue city charter amendment pertaining to planning board and zoning commission member appointments. And so what they're pointing out is that the current city charter has a line item in it that says the mayor shall appoint with the consensus council all members of boards, except the mayor may appoint without the consensus council's temporary committees established by the mayor. That is in direct conflict with the 2017 bylaws as written right now. So there's also another thing in our packet about changing the bylaws for other things, but it's not only just that it's in conflict with our bylaws, it's also in conflict with state code. And it is the case that the interpretation is that the charter supersedes these documents, and also the planning board would like to see that conflict resolved somehow. So their recommendation is that this city council pursue amending the charter and addressing this section 3.04, the mayor shall appoint, address that conflict in this way by amending the charter. Now, we aren't prepared to put forth to the community via a vote what that would look like. We're not prepared with the language for that. So my suggestion would be that, this resolution is on here for information only, but my suggestion would be that this council and hopefully future councils will look at this line item so that it gets amended next year when we have time to make the language right, when we have time to review it with lawyers and Dan Clark and whoever else needs to look at it, so that this conflict between what bylaws for some boards say and what the city charter says is resolved. So that's that. Are there questions about that?
But, I mean,
And that's the
yeah, and
information.
this is a big conversation, and, ultimately though, for years, I think the bylaws have not been in the proper, they haven't followed the rules of the charter. The charter is the main document that the city has to follow. There's a lot that goes into this conversation. So, and there's, again, all sorts of advisements from MSU, other governments. And so if that's going to be changed, then it would be changed at a future date when council chose to amend the city charter. Until then, all rules of the present charter will stay in effect.
I would like to give Cody a chance to chime in. She doesn't have to, but this would be a good opportunity if she wanted to say something. Cody, do you want to chime in?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This was all new information to me when it came up a couple weeks ago when I was visiting, and it was a little alarming to me. I don't think it's totally abnormal. There's a handful of communities around the state that I work in specifically that are working through this same process. And in totally personal opinion, but you do follow your charter. I would say a planning board is a little bit different because there is statute that details how planning boards are structured and appointed. So the quicker you can work to line up your charter with that statute, the better off you are, not only for the sake of fairness for all processes related to planning and anything that goes through that planning board, but also so that everything's lining up the same. Everything's on the same page. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Cody.
Yeah, and that's just, I'll just add that when the statute conflicts with the city charter, the charter prevails. So that's why the bylaws of planning boards need to be in confirmation with the city charter and not the state statute. The changes are not that significant. I think they're pretty minor.
I was just gonna say, if you want me to, we sent this off to Dan Clark today, the proposed change, and there's really 12 words that we wanted to change, but we didn't get any confirmation from him, which is, I think, makes it too late to address tonight.
All right, any more on that? All right, next up is another public hearing. Knocking them down tonight. Jen, would you like to introduce ordinance 963?
Ordinance 963, first reading. Do you feel like you're in a time loop? This is the short-term rentals within city limits ordinance. The changes that I'll direct everyone to are in section 5 and 6. If you have a colored copy, they are the green ones, but I'm just going to read it to you. So the changes since the last time we've seen this are: the city of Red Lodge hereby establishes a limit of total STR licenses. This is just a cleanup language and make it very explicit. A limit of total STR licenses permitted within the city of Red Lodge. They calculated as 20% of the total number of dwelling units was last time, and then, based on the good conversation I had with Tom Coons, he suggested that this language be cleared up regarding where we get our, total denominator numbers. So I'll read it to you again. City of Red Lodge hereby establishes a limit of total STR licenses permitted within the City of Red Lodge, calculated as 20% of the total number of dwelling units within the City of Red Lodge, as determined by the 911 address list provided by the Red Lodge Fire Department. This is not a change in, this is a change in language, to be clear. It is not a change in where we're getting our numbers from. It's just last time we talked about getting it from DES, and Tom pointed out to me that that's not exactly accurate. So it's the same number that the STR committee proposed, like getting that number from the STR committee that they proposed. It's just, it's as determined by the 911 address list. And then the rest of it is wherever it says threshold in section 5 and section 6, it will be changed to limit. So the, in the next paragraph, the limit will be calculated by the City of Red Lodge staff in the event that the limit is reached. And then in section 6, there's two areas in the bolded section. So type 1 STRs are exempt from the limit established in section 5. And then type 2, 55% of the limit established in section 5 shall be reserved for professionally managed short-term rental properties. The remaining 45% of the limit established in section 5 shall be made available to all classification types unless exempt from the limit for this ordinance.
That's a very nice introduction. So with that, we will open the public hearing. The public hearing is now open. If you'd like to make a comment on this issue, please approach the podium and follow the same guidelines as we discussed earlier.
Hi, Jen. Jen Cass, 8 North Platte. Thank you for your willingness to slow down, ask questions, and deliberate over ordinance 963. AAA Red Lodge Rentals appreciates the consideration of how the ordinance will impact our business, the tourism industry here in Red Lodge, and how it will hopefully create change that some people want to see. We remain committed to balance and health for our community, as well as for our business and the industry we represent. I still do stand personally in favor of private property rights. On that, I do object to the ordinance. In principle, our company objects to the ordinance based on biased language in Resolution 3607. That was the resolution that created the FTR Advisory Committee. Also, the survey results that the FTR Advisory Committee gathered. As a review process is established, assuming that this ordinance is passed, as a review process is established as an annual standard operating procedure for the City of Red Lodge, we do ask that representatives of the industry be invited to the table for that review process. I also encourage everyone to follow and consider impacts if changes to the allowed use tables are introduced. This would be planning board driven, and how those changes in conjunction with Ordinance 963 could impact tourism and the STR economic engine in Red Lodge. Affordable housing, workforce housing. Although it was stated that this is not the aim or emphasis behind this ordinance, I do believe it has driven it to a large extent. As we move forward as a community to address affordable housing as well as workforce housing, please note that the responsibility to create, problem solve, and explore options can be shared by the entirety of the tourism economic engine, the citizens of Red Lodge, the staff, the business owners, the retirees, etc. The responsibility to find solutions for affordable workforce housing does not fall on one industry or one category of citizens. That being said, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but if the city were to pass a resolution that created an affordable workforce housing advisory committee, I will apply to serve. I do think that the creation of an affordable workforce housing advisory committee might have been the best place to begin. Regardless, I am still willing to apply to serve if that is done. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Any more comments? Sandy?
Sandy Conley, 307 Hagen Avenue South. Everybody knows where I live. I don't really have a problem with the cap, calling it a threshold, it's still a cap. Simply because I don't think in my 20 years here that I've seen the fluctuations, so I don't think we're ever gonna hit it, so it's kind of a big waste of everybody's time. But again, I'm not against it because I don't think it's ever gonna be effective. The classifications, I have a great problem with. Saying that only professionally managed properties get a larger percentage of the cap versus the ones that Joe Smead owns is wrong, because there's no logical reason for it. Okay, we already have the planning and zoning where somebody has to respond quickly. There's a lot of new rules that were enacted less than a year ago regarding short-term rentals and having someone respond right away. So putting in these classifications serves zero purpose except for the guy who owns the house next door or a block away, and he's not a professional manager, but you know, he has a short-term rental and he and his wife are on Social Security, and it helps, you know, they bought it in 1960, so it's affordable for them. And now they have to pay 30 to 40% of gross to a management company. And so what this ordinance does is it leans towards professionally managed, but there's no real reason for it, except that the professionally managed, they have to be there within a certain length of time, which we've already taken care of in zoning. They do exactly the same thing. Whether to get your license, you still have to have the fire department inspect it, you still have to have the county sanitarian approve it, you still have to have your licenses. There's nothing additional that a property manager does for a house, except for those homes that are owned by out-of-staters. And generally, and I think that Jim and Chelsea would both agree, is that those out-of-staters want a property management company local. And so they use it even though they're going to give up 30 to 40% of their gross. So I don't like the classification, and I just think that the caps that are proposed are kind of useless.
Thanks, Sandy. Anyone else have a comment? Anyone online have any comments on this newest first reading of regulating short-term rentals? Anyone else? Last call for comments on ordinance 963. All right, public hearing is now closed. Would someone like to make a motion?
I will move to approve ordinance number 963.
1 second. All right, discussion. Any further discussion on this?
I think I'll just clarify a little bit on the classification. So they were written this way because individuals can become their own property management company. And because the property management companies are registered in Montana and have to go through some extra hoops to be, you know, recognized in the state. I would also just point out that we still have the owner occupied exempt section for folks who are renting out of their owner's primary residence. And, you know, again, this is a culmination of many, many months and many, many people coming together and compromising. And I think it's really important that our community not miss the opportunity to provide this protection and to be proactive. Most communities are doing so, and if we miss the moment, then you know, it's hard to back them. So, thanks.
Terry?
I just had one observation here. So if you look at section 5, what is the time frame for the total number of dwellings? It seems like it should have something that says calculate as 20% of the current total number of dwelling units. There's no time frame on that.
Next section, the limit shall be calculated by our legislative staff each June annually. So every June.
Any further discussion, questions, comments? All right, ready for roll call? Roll call.
Battles?
Yeah.
Daniel?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Durbin?
No.
Keys?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes.
All right. Next up is Resolution 3632, to delay the disposition of airport assets for action. And Chris is going to give us an introduction.
Again.
Funny, it's my resolution, but whatever.
Do you want to introduce it?
What
Terry?
other land use and planning is
Well-
land use and planning?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Go
my
ahead.
resolution. I'm the one that wrote it, so. Resolution 3632, a resolution of the city council to conditionally delay the disposition of all airport assets.
All right, would someone like to make a motion?
I move to approve resolution 3632.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I'll discuss. I feel like with all the things that are going on with the board, that this may be not necessary, and, I would like to see what happens with those boards, and that maybe delay voting on this. Because I have hope that the boards will move things forward.
Right, but this is just a stay of determination. So we suspend things and then,
It's not for the termination, it's for the dispensation of assets,
Well-
disposition of assets.
the disposition of assets and with the continuing airport board continuing in authority to maintain the airport in its current state, conditional upon the airport board and Carbon County providing the city of Red Lodge all information. So you don't want to just keep the airport board functioning as is.
I want a resolution, and I think giving people 2 more months after we've been working on this since January is not ideal. I feel like we need to get things moving.
I agree with you, and that's the reason why we have those boards we're putting in place, but who is going, you don't want the current airport board to continue to maintain the airport until October 13th, because we'll have all this stuff done. That's really what this is saying.
I think that, I think we're under the gun, and I'm okay with passing this so that we do have some extra time, so that negotiations can happen back and forth, so the boards can meet, so they can come up with the interlocal agreement language and the boundaries of the airport. And this just ensures for the airport itself that it will continue to function as is until October. And there's not like, oh my gosh, I mean, because August 1st is just around the corner. And we have until August 13th. That's like literally, 2.5 weeks. That's not a lot of time. I've been on committees like this before. It's great to say we'll meet once and we'll figure it all out, but that might not necessarily be the case. It could be we meet, we have to bring it back to council. Council decides if they want to go with it. And on the other end, they're introducing it to the county commissioners. And like, I just don't, like they say, government moves at a snail's pace. And I don't want to be under, yes, I think I want it done as quickly as possible, but at the same time, I don't want it rushed. And I think that the October 13th date will give us that opportunity for both sides to come together and hopefully come up with what's best for the airport and the city of Red Lodge and the county citizens as well.
And another way to look at it too, Chris, is that by having a date on there, it adds an urgency, right? It doesn't say indefinite.
Well, they already have a date, and it's August 13th.
No, that is for providing us with the information that the city's waiting for. That's the August 13th, the assets and all of that information. That's why we added that in there, because before there was some delay in getting all the information we needed to make the decision. So that's what the August 13th was for.
So the next, what's the next city council day? The 8th. So, I would rather decide this now than, to extend it now than to wait till August 8th and be under the gun and say, we don't have an agreement yet. Because the disposition of assets are set to happen on August 13th.
So we would still have time to entertain this resolution on August 8th.
We would, but I'd rather have it done now.
Right.
So that it just gives us a little more breathing room.
I will say, whether or not we pass this tonight or table it to the 8th will impact that temporary committee that the mayor put the three of us on, with Brian and Jim and Steve. Like, that would dictate how fast we have to go, in my mind.
Yeah.
It also doesn't
So-
mean that it can't be extended. It just means that is, you know, I mean, it could be premature to consider extending it now because, you know, there's nothing that's been presented that would indicate it needs to be. But Brian, do you have anything you'd like to add?
The conversation with Steve is when he gets back, we're gonna set a meeting. And,
When is he getting back?
the 30th. So that week, set a meeting, everybody get together. And we're pretty confident we'll have a good update on where we're at. Is everything gonna be figured out? Could be not. We don't know until we get together. And so it was just, before the 8th, there will be an update of what we've discussed, where we're at, and we'll have a good idea of, are we making headroom, are we not? Where do we go?
I like that. I like the idea of moving that quickly, because it's important and because, I mean, like, dragging it out is just, however, I also am sitting here going, okay, but on the 13th, if we don't have an interlocal agreement draft in front of us that we are ready to vote on, then there has to be something in place that says who's gonna run the airport until we figure that out. And this resolution covers that. And
Get a deadline.
and gives us a deadline.
Yeah.
And I'd like all of us to know that it's there, and I'd like the commissioners to know that it's there.
Right. But the intent of the airport board is so that there's no lapse. We don't expect any lapse in anything, you know, but I mean, we won't know until the 8th what exactly we're looking at. There's just been nothing done so far. And, you know, we can cross this bridge on the 8th. I'm not really worried about any lapse in management of the airport. We've got Brian on board. I don't know what this lapse would consist of. Would anybody like to
Well,
speak of what this
I guess
lapse
I would
be?
just say it's not a lapse, it's the proposal, if we don't do this, then the proposal is there is a change. And that change is not agreed to by all of us and by the commissioners. And I'm not saying that change is we should do it or we shouldn't do it, but I'm saying I'd like to vote on this tonight. I just would.
Any more discussion? All right, roll call.
Battle?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Durbin?
Yes.
Keith?
No.
Ronnie?
Yes.
All right, next up. This is Jen introducing ordinance 803. Are you,
Yeah, I'm just laughing because,
okay.
so this is the second part of the planning board and zoning commission bylaws. So this time there's ordinance 803 First Amendment. And what goes with that is the 2023 draft bylaws from the planning board. So that's what you're looking at now. So basically, since 2017, when the previous bylaws were put in place, there's the new state code that, and so this ordinance, First Amendment, ordinance 803 was the original. This First Amendment complies with the new state code since 2017, and it accompanies these new adjusted planning board and zoning commission bylaws. So I believe this is just public hearing first reading, but that's This is to comply with new state code. We're not addressing whether or not the charter supersedes state code. We're just saying we want our bylaws to agree with the state code. And that, when I say we, I mean the planning board. That makes sense.
Yeah, then I guess it's up for first reading, so we'll go ahead and take public comment. The comment period is open. Would anybody like to make a comment? Anyone online like to make a public comment on this issue?
I do have a quick comment.
Okay.
I'm Jeremy Battles at 709 Hagen. I'm not representing the Urban Renewal Agency. However, we have had discussions about our bylaws. And, you know, we would, our general consensus, you know, I would say is that, you know, we would like our bylaws to be, you know, in parallel, you know, similar to what planning board is doing. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and it's useful for us to provide a recommendation to council, then that's something that we can bring back to that. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Anyone else like to make a public comment on this issue, present or online? All right, with no further comments, this public hearing is closed. So would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 803, First Amendment.
I will second.
All right, any discussion?
I can just be super clear about what's changing. So obviously the membership is still here, so that's, you know, the board shall consist of not less than 7 members to be appointed per state code. So this mirrors state code now. The other thing is that the planning board decided to change their length of terms to be 3 years, beginning in March of the year of their initial appointment. And really that's the big changes.
Hey, Denison, I have a question. Are you reading this ordinance?
Yes.
If it doesn't comply with the charter, can you speak on that?
Mayor, members of City Council, that is a good question. If it doesn't comply with the charter. Obviously, I think there's kind of 3 layers that's being discussed here today. There's obviously the bylaws that can be discussed, and then the bylaws have to comply with the ordinance that was established in it, and then the ordinance has to comply with the charter. I think we've already discussed them trying to comply with, or make the charter comply with the bylaws, and I believe that was voted down today. And so
it just wasn't addressed today.
It wasn't addressed. And so I think the best we could do is to try to get the, you cannot pass, or I guess you could, but it would definitely be faulty, to pass the bylaws if they don't comply with the ordinance. Right now, the ordinance, what it does is it dictates that it will follow the state statute, and the current bylaws, I guess the amendments, work not according to the state statute. So it'd be best if we can at least get the bylaws and the ordinances to match, then I guess deal with the difference between the the ordinances and the charter. I don't know your time.
So just to clarify,
Yeah.
the first reading is to get the bylaws and the ordinance to agree. That was point 1. So that's what we're addressing.
Yep.
And then after that, we can look at discrepancies between this and the charter.
Okay.
But aren't you proposing language that doesn't conform to the charter?
It already is there, Mayor. The current bylaws are also out of compliance.
That's not changing. That section on membership.
No, but as a whole, you're asking for this. I mean, it just seems like it should kept be in line with the charter if you're gonna have an ordinance, and this is not.
So that's why these were separated. So this is amending an ordinance that already exists to cover the 3-year term. this language is in the, this membership language is in the ordinance from 803. Like,
Right,
this is all,
but you're asking for it to be reapproved.
no, we're asking to amend a
Okay.
current ordinance with length of term.
Dennison, would it be proper for the ordinance to be in line with the charter?
Mayor, members of the city council, is the best case scenario, that the ordinances follow the charter, the bylaws follow the ordinance.
And the current ordinance is out of alignment with the charter.
That is correct.
So even if this language wasn't here, that problem is persistent.
It seems like this would be a very good idea to correct the entire document rather than just correct one little part.
So I guess what I'm getting at is this ordinance will allow planning boards to have a change in length of term while we figure out the discrepancy with the charter.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Is that-
I don't know why I would do it twice.
I just had a quick question. Why, are the current terms are 2 years?
Right, correct.
So when, why do they want to go to 3 years?
So there was conversation about a couple of things. One, recommendations from Dan Clark. Another, I guess we are one of the only communities in the state that has 2-year terms for planning board. Another comment that was made by current planning board members is that it really takes about a year to get your feet under you in terms of understanding all of the documents that planning board needs to be very familiar with in order to make good decisions. And it's also a zoning commission, so it's like those votes impact people long term, and so there was a lot of discussion about just best practices and like really helping, really gaining some generational knowledge, if you will, on that board. And then the other thing that I recollect was that in order to, because 3 years is a long time, and so to address that, the bylaws also made a change sorry, I think this is in their policies and procedures, that they would allow a few more absences than they had been. It had been quite strict in terms of you can't miss a meeting.
Where is that?
A few meetings. I think, I'm double checking, but I think that's actually in their policies and procedures, not in the law. And I could be wrong, so let me double check right now.
I know it says that they would hold an organizational meeting within 15 days to adjust and determine staggered 3-year term membership. Did they discuss exactly who would get the 3-year term versus
They did
on
not.
the 2-year term?
They did not. I'm sorry, the bylaws under section 3 attendance, it does say that it was switched from those suggested changes are 8 regular meetings. That's based on 3-year commitments. Those changes are there. No, they did not discuss who would get, how they would do that in detail.
Excuse me. Any further discussion or questions? All right, roll call.
Battles? Yes. Daniel?
Yes.
Durbin?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes.
I know. All right. With that, if there's any correspondence in your packet, thank you very much for coming to the meeting. This meeting is adjourned.